let's get to Nebraska. This is the final part of this. And, Dave, you already mentioned earlier kind of what my offseason mantra has been. And Brett, to bring you up on it, I've said it for us, to me, it's the race to 6. And the race to 6 is just that. How quick can we get to 6 wins? If we're 6-0 after 6 games, awesome, right? Let's reevaluate. Let's get to 8, 9, 10, 11 wins. Like Redcasters said, let's go 10-2, right? But if we're 5-6 when Iowa comes to town on Black Friday, let's get that 6th win. Let's beat them for a second straight season. Let's get to a bowl game. That's so important at a place, a blue blood like Nebraska, to get back to the bowl games. And it's something that's been, far too long for us. So I'll never put ceilings on this program. I'll never say we can only go 8-4. I wonder what TCU ceiling a lot of people last year would have said, in year 1 of the Dykes era, a lot of people would have given a ceiling to them too, right? So anyone can beat it. But coming into this season, for me, it is getting to 6 at least. Getting that bowl game is so crucial, so important. So, Brett Ciancia, not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot. Are we going to a bowl game this year?
I'm going to have to say yes for the bowl season. I think that's definitely going to happen.
Go Big Red!
Bowl games here on the schedule. Well, I mean, I was wrong the one year I picked you to win the West, so don't take my word for it too much. But no, I think there's a lot of areas of strength on the roster. There's a lot of winnable games here, and it's just numbers of some of those close games have to start reversing the wins. You already saw it last year. You got the Iowa streak ended, really had Wisconsin so close again, really almost ended that streak. But you look at some of these games, they might be on the road, but they're still winnable. They're still toss-ups. The swing games being Minnesota, Michigan State, even in Illinois. Those are all winnable ball games, and I think there's enough on that plate to get to 6 for sure.
Right here, we have a graphic that graphic designer Swobes created for us. It's ranked the toughest 23 road games for us. So to your point there, we start with Minnesota in week 1 in a very strange scheduling occurrence for us. Only the 3rd time in the modern era of Nebraska football. We start the season with 2 road games in a row. So the Redcast will be at Minnesota on August 31st. And then I'm heading out to Colorado to see Dave and Rob out there in Boulder the next weekend. Then we have Illinois on a Friday night after the Michigan game. So a 6-day rest after playing Michigan. We go out and play Illinois. And then Michigan State, which is apparently going to be an easy win for us, according to Redcasters, because I think they had us at like 75% winning in East Lansing. I love you, Redcast Nation, but that seems nice. And then we go out to Wisconsin. If you were ranking these 5 games here, Brett, from 1 to 5, hardest to most likely to win, how would you do this?
Well, I think the hardest right away is yeah, well, it's a good question. I think the hardest right away is Wisconsin. So we'll put that as the hardest. I have them winning the division like we talked about. Tough place to play. Second toughest, I'll probably go with at Illinois. Check that. Let me flip that to at Minnesota. Just because you're catching, it's a season opener, the first game ever of this new era. You have new coordinators, new quarterbacks, a whole new roster. So I think Nebraska in the opener, that's a tough draw to go into Minnesota. They're just such a well-established program. What they have there, it's very a lot of continuity. So I'll say Minnesota number 2, just because it's the opener of an era. Third hardest, right in the middle, I'll go with at Illinois. Just a solid team. They're physical. You're getting from them. It's a solid top 30 team. That leaves the second easiest or 4th hardest, however you want to phrase it. I'd go with Colorado there. Who am I forgetting here? Oh, Michigan State. I forgot about Michigan State. I will go Michigan State with the number 4 spot, with Colorado being the easiest. I think you're catching. I think Colorado is very overhyped. I was on Sirius XM radio back in March, and they were asking me, "Can Colorado get to 10 wins?" And I almost chuckled. I was thinking, their Vegas number is probably going to be less than half of that. I think my answer was, if they get to half of that 10 wins, that's a huge miracle success. It's just, we never seen anything like it in college football. 65 new players, just a Frankenstein roster put together. So I just don't think it's going to click. And if it does click, it's not going to happen by week 2. So I think you catch them at a great time. And you guys know the stadium's going to be all red anyway. So I don't know if that Colorado game qualifies for this question. Actually,
this is why we love
the toughest
Brett.
road game. I don't know. Does that count? I don't think it counts.
Well, I have the race to 6 for Nebraska, but I have like the race to 3 for Colorado. So no, this is that's very appropriate. So let's get to Nebraska here. Let's talk about, what we have coming back. If we start on the offensive side, you've already talked about the quarterbacks in the league. And, you mentioned we brought up Jeff Sims. So he's one of the transfers, one of the many transfers in the Big Ten West. Obviously, there's it's not Jekyll and Hyde even. And Mac, I'll kind of talk with you about this. It's not just Jekyll and Hyde. It's high risk and high reward with him. Tons of production, tons of scores and touchdowns, but a lot of turnovers that have come along with it. And Dave, you brought this up over the offseason too, injuries as well. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you, Mac, and then Brett, we want to get you into this. Mac, when you look at Jeff Sims right now, what are your impressions, what you've seen? We're a week into a fall camp. What are you wanting to see out of that quarterback position?
Mostly just consistency, mostly just playing smart, like being a manager and being explosive when necessary. I haven't heard a ton of hype around him. Like when Adrian's second year, there was nothing but hype about him. And he had a good freshman year, but his second year, everybody was looking at him. Really, Sims doesn't make a lot of lists, even for the top transfer quarterback list. And I'm fine with that. I think, and for good reasons, his numbers are what they are. His turnover margin isn't great. And, we've had a bit of an issue with that around here. So that does make me a little gun shy about just jumping on board. Cause they always say, the best predictor of production is past production, right? So, the numbers are what they are. But if you were going to say, get on the new NCAA football that's set to come out next year and create a quarterback, he would end up looking a lot like Jeff Sims, same kind of seeds, same arm strength. Accuracy is something you can work on, but you still have to see it. So, obviously the offensive line starts it off, but to look at what kind of year we have, if Sims is anywhere sniffing even second team all conference, third team all conference, we're having a good year. That's easily bowling.
Well, Brett, I think that opens it up to you. What are you expecting out of Sims in year one here? What would you say is I don't want to say ceilings. I hate saying ceilings, but what's a talent wise? What is he at? What can Matt Rhule do with him? Maybe to fix some of the errors that he's done at Georgia Tech with the turnovers and everything. What can we expect out of Sims? What's a best case scenario kind of thing out of him?
Brett, I think you're muted. There we go.
Hey, sorry about that. Yeah, with Jeff Sims, we've seen the ceiling at times. So he's flashed it all the way back since 2020 when he was a freshman. I remember watching him at Georgia Tech. He was running all over the field. He's got 4.4 speed. So really impressive. I know Matt Rhule has watched him for years too and has been gushing over him at the podium, and rightfully so. The upside is definitely there. So when we talk about some of the limitations, the turnovers, the mistakes, I want to see more of it though, because I don't know how much of that was the coaching at Georgia Tech or the scheme there or the personnel they had around him. There's so many variables there. It was a really tough spot the last couple of years at Georgia Tech. So, but the stuff that you can't fake or that you can't blame others for, the athleticism is certainly there. So he's a dynamic player. I can't wait to see him. I know Nebraska loves fast quarterbacks, running quarterbacks, but looks like this guy has an arm too. So it's exciting to see.
Fast quarterbacks and faster women. That's what we like. But anyway, what I was going to say was, is that added a whole new element to how you have to rate these? Because you look at past production, you look at numbers, but a lot of times these guys are coming from different schools, different conferences, different offenses. Like, how hard does that make your job now to kind of unpack what they did, project what they're going to do? And, it just seems so difficult.
Yeah, it's gotten 10 times harder than when I started this 10 years ago. Back then it was very consistent year to year. The rosters didn't change much. If somebody transferred, he was probably a backup anyway. You never heard of the guy. So now you have starters, all conference guys transferring, even record-setting quarterbacks like Sam Hartman. And that's actually a great example to bring up because, I do this on a player-by-player or position-by-position basis, where with Sam Hartman, he was very proven at Wake Forest. But that's a very specialized offense. It's a very unique offense, that slow mesh they run. That they're not going to be running that at Notre Dame. So I didn't, you'd think that with that kind of transfer that I have Notre Dame up in the top 10, it's not always a one-to-one case like that. And the inverse of that could be true with Sims, where the athleticism is certainly there, but maybe the system didn't fit what he was doing, or maybe he needs better coaching around him. So it's definitely an exhaustive full-year project that I do.
Yeah.
One of the things I love so much about the project that you do every year with Pick Six Previews, one of the reasons I think it's so unique as a publication is that it's not simply wins and losses and just looking at stats from the year before. You talk about win conversion, you talk about player development, you actually rank it, something I haven't seen any other magazines do. Nebraska over the last 5-year period has been number 19, relatively high out of the 69 P5.
It's a respectable number.
Respectable, number 19. It's in recruiting. So number 19 out of 69 in recruiting. But out of 69 teams, and I think we all understand this because we started this podcast back in 2017, we are number 69 out of 69 in win conversion. And we're number 66 of 69 in player development. To put that in perspective, to put in perspective, Iowa from the West is number 2 in win conversion. Minnesota is 6th in player development. Iowa is 3rd. Minnesota is 4th. Purdue is 5th. Wisconsin is 6th. So they don't recruit at the level that we do, but they turn around players and develop them. This is something we're going to hear a lot about here, or we've been hearing a lot about with Coach Rhule, is development. Man development's important. We, in this fall camp of just a week and a half already, they have 2 different stations of players going, and everyone's getting reps. Young guys are getting 40 and 50 reps, and they've made a very big point of that. Brett, walk us through a little bit of that. What is the win conversion? What is player development? Why has Nebraska been so poor at that? And what can Matt Rhule do to really make a big difference in that?
Yeah, so those 2 metrics you mentioned, I put together because it's you can't put all your eggs in one basket. You can't only look at the raw recruiting rankings. I think some of the other publications will just gloss over that and say, "Oh, they're the top recruiters, pick them to win." There's so much more goes into it. I mean, they're there. It doesn't just end on National Signing Day. They're there 4 or 5 years on campus. Something's got to be happening there when they're on campus. So, and that's weight room, that's strength and conditioning, development at the players by position coaches, coordinators, head coaches. Do the schemes work? Are they recruiting towards the scheme? So all that goes into it. And what those numbers are, it's comparing the raw recruiting rankings versus the actual win percentage, the game grader on the field. And then the other one was player development, which is the same deal. You start with the recruiting rankings, and then you compare it to what they're actually sending to the pros on draft day. So, Nebraska, to no one's surprise here, it's been a rough 5-year stretch for the program. They're towards the bottom there. They recruit really well, best in the division, but nothing has really been there to show for it. And part of it, and there's not really a metric to show it, but it's player retention. You look at these top recruits that they sign each year, and then fast forward 2 or 3 years, they're no longer in Lincoln. So many of them have left. So that's one thing that I think Matt Rhule needs to focus on is player retention along with player development. So, and I think it's important to understand the strengths and potential limitations of your program. And I think that with Nebraska, nation best fans, the NIL is going to be there. The fan support will always be there. It's never going away. It's one of the strongest out there. But on the other side of the coin, they don't have the geography on their side. They're not walking around South Florida where there's 100 5-stars or in Southern California or Texas. So given the geography, you got to be the best developers in the conference. And that's something that they can definitely get to. And I think that for Nebraska to hit their strengths as a program, they need to reclaim that spot as the top developers.